I know tongues is a gift, but he mentions knowledge. Is that a gift?
Well, there is. In the previous chapter, Paul had listed 9 gifts, and one of them was the word of knowledge. And it's whatever the word of knowledge is. I mean, I have an idea what it is because charismatic people have a definition for that. And if that's the correct definition, then it's a special gift, and it's not just generic knowledge. However, Paul doesn't say the gift of word of knowledge will pass away. He says knowledge will pass away. But it may be, again, he said, I knew as a child, but I put away childish knowledge. Now I know as a man. So it may be he's saying the way you guys do these gifts, the immature way that you are doing it, we know in part, we prophesy in part, that those things will be replaced with mature forms of the same thing someday. If we're talking about absolute disappearance of these things, then knowledge does seem to throw a wrench in the works for the cessationists. Because they say, well, yeah, tongues is gone, prophecy is gone, but by the same argument, knowledge is gone. And if knowledge is gone, how can they know that these things are gone? Since knowing is our knowledge. I need to take another call. My lines are full. I appreciate your call, Carrie. Those are my answers to your thoughts. Jason in Salem, Oregon, welcome.
Hey, Steve. It's great to talk to you. I really appreciate your ministry. Thank you so much. My question is about Old Testament prophecy. Did I hear you say the other day that there is no Old Testament prophecy about the second coming? Is that what you believe?
That is my impression, yes. I mean, and I say that not just because I don't take any sweeping remarks about the Bible saying there's nothing in the Bible about this without having checked. I did for 16 years ran a Bible school where I taught verse by verse through all the prophets. And so I've gone through them with a fine-tooth comb, and I can't think of anything in them that's about the second coming of Christ. Now, I can think of a lot of passages that I once thought were about the second coming of Christ. Certainly, Zechariah chapters 12 through 14, I once thought were about that. Quite a few passages in Daniel I used to think were that.
Would you say that all Old Testament prophecy has already been fulfilled?
Well, either has been finally fulfilled or was inaugurated in the past and is still going on. And like a lot of the prophecies about the church age, which began in the first century and of course is continuing to this time. So, it's not as if they have no relevance to what's going on now. It's just that I don't know of any prophecy about any event that is supposed to happen in the end times. The whole church age is the end times, I think, as far as the Bible's concerned. And here's something Jesus said when he was talking about the coming of the Romans to destroy Jerusalem in AD 70. This is in Luke chapter 21. He predicted to his disciples that the temple in Jerusalem would be destroyed. And we know it was in AD 70 when the Romans burned it down. That was 40 years after Jesus said it. And the disciples came and asked, when will this happen? And what sign will there be that it's about to happen? There's when will the temple be destroyed? And what sign, what warning will there be that's about to happen? Now, he answered both. One of his answers was, this generation will not pass till all these things are fulfilled. So, when will it happen? It'll happen in this generation. He got that dead right. It happened 40 years later. It was in that generation that it happened. The other thing was, he said, and Matthew and Mark render it this way, when you see the abomination of desolation standing where it ought not, then you know that the time is near. But Luke, who's writing to a Gentile man named Theophilus, who he was pretty sure wouldn't understand the Hebrew expression abomination of desolation, Luke paraphrased it for us. And we see the paraphrase in verse 20. Now, he is talking about the Romans coming to destroy the temple. That's what the subject is of this chapter. And he says in verse 20, right, he said, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. So the Romans coming was that. Then he said, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains, which the Christians did. They fled from Jerusalem. They went to Pella across the Jordan in the mountains, the hills. He said, let those who are in the midst of her, that is Jerusalem, depart, and do not let those who are in the country enter her, for these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Now, he's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, He says, these are the days of vengeance. Now, Isaiah had spoken of the days of vengeance. For example, in Isaiah 61:2 and some other places, Isaiah 63 also mentions the days of vengeance. And Jesus said, yeah, 70 AD, when the Romans come and destroy the temple, that is the days of vengeance. He said, so that all things that are written, he must mean the Old Testament prophecies, may be fulfilled. So he sounds like he's saying that all of the prophecies that had not yet been fulfilled in his day would be fulfilled in the destruction of Jerusalem, all the Old Testament prophecies. Now, I'm not a full preterist. A full preterist would say everything that ever was supposed to happen happened in 70 AD. Jesus didn't say that. He said all things that are written. Well, at the time he spoke, only the Old Testament, so there's no New Testament yet. And the New Testament does contain prophecies of the second coming of Christ. So you've got prophecies of the second coming of Christ in Jesus' own teaching in Matthew 25:31 and following. You've got his teaching about the second coming in Acts 1:11, where the two angels said, "You men of Galilee, why do you stand gazing into heaven? The same Jesus whom you saw go away from you will return in like manner as you saw him go." You've got, of course, First Thessalonians and Second Thessalonians have references to the second coming of Christ in the future. Now, of course, they wrote before 70 AD, but we don't have to assume that their predictions were fulfilled in 70 AD because Jesus didn't speak about those predictions. He spoke about Old Testament predictions. Jesus said in Matthew 5 that he didn't come to abolish the law and the prophets, but to fulfill them. The law and the prophets means the Old Testament. So he said that he came to fulfill the law and the prophets. And so I assume that unless he failed in his mission, he did fulfill the law and the prophets. But that doesn't mean there were other prophecies given later.
But another way to say that would be the New Testament fulfills the Old Testament, basically?
Yeah. The New Testament is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. Jesus in particular is the fulfillment. But the things about salvation, about the Messiah, about the renewal of creation, and many things in the Old Testament do have a fulfillment in the New Testament. And the New Testament writers identify their own times as the time of fulfillment because they quote these passages from the Old Testament, which many people today, many teachers say, quote those passages as if they're talking about the end times. The New Testament writers quoted
all out in the future.
Yeah, they quoted the whole, all these passages, or many of them, and identified them with their own time 2,000 years ago. So I think that, I don't. When you asked, was all the Old Testament prophecies fulfilled in the first century? I think they were. I don't plan to suggest I know everything. I never did know everything, and never will. But I would say I don't know of any Old Testament prophecies, and I'm pretty familiar with all of them. Like I said, I taught verse by verse.
You don't know them, there's probably out there.
Well, some people may know them. Certainly some people know it better than I do, but I know it pretty well. Having taught verse by verse through the prophets 16 times, I'm pretty acquainted with them. So,
can I ask you one more super quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
You probably already answered this. I don't know. I've never heard. Have you watched The Chosen? And if so, what did you think of it?
I've watched the first season and maybe a few other episodes. I didn't hate it.
Okay. Keep going.
I'll tell you this. I'm generally not fond of television and movie representations of Christ.
Right.
It's very rare for a modern actor to portray Christ exactly the way I think he was. And when they begin to write plot lines and teachings and stuff into the TV series that aren't in the Bible, I'm not saying they're getting it wrong. I'm just saying they're guessing. And I don't like to guess. I don't like to guess about what Jesus is like. I like to know what he's like. So I'm not really very fond of the whole genre of television depictions of Christ. But as such depictions go, I think from the parts I've seen, Jonathan Rumi does a good Jesus. The only Jesus I liked better in a movie was the actor whose name I forget, who did the Gospel of John. There's a movie called the Gospel of John. There may be more than one. The one I'm referring to is Christopher Plummer narrating, and there's nothing in it except the scriptures. And the guy who I don't have much time to
goes along with the Bible.
Yeah, it just only has Bible in it. And The guy who played Jesus was in the series Lost, and he does a great job, in my opinion. And I need to take a break. You're listening to The Narrow Path. We have another half hour coming. Our website is thenarrowpath.com. I'll be right back. Don't go away.
In this series, When Shall These Things Be?, we'll learn that the biblical teaching concerning the rapture, the tribulation, Armageddon, the Antichrist, and the millennium are not necessarily in agreement with the wild sensationalist versions of these doctrines found in popular prophecy teaching and Christian fiction. The lecture series entitled When Shall These Things Be? Can be downloaded without charge from our website.
Welcome back to the Narrow Path Radio broadcast. My name is Steve Gregg, and we're live for another half hour taking your calls. Looks like my lines are full again, so I'm not going to give out the number yet. If we get some lines open and we have time, I will give it out again. You can call it. Otherwise, you can listen in, as the majority of people do, to the calls that will come in. I should say, if you are in Oregon, I am currently in your state, and it's possible that I'm going to be in your neighborhood because I'm going to be all over the place the next 10 days. I'll be teaching. Tonight I'm in Brownsville, by the way, all of our Albany area people and stuff. If you don't know that, you might want to find that out. Tonight I'm in a home in Brownsville. And that's, I think it's at maybe 6 o'clock. I'm not sure. You have to look at our website, thenarrowpath.com, under announcements. And you'd have to look there anyway to find the place. But Brownsville tonight. Tomorrow I'm speaking 3 times on the Kingdom of God in Philomath area. It's not actually Philomath, it's some little town. Peavy is the name of the little town. And then, let's see, I'm going to be teaching in Salem, and I'm going to be teaching in Malala, I'm going to be teaching in Portland, I'm going to be teaching, I'm even going to be in Rockaway Beach, I think is the name of it, one night. I'm going to be all over the place, so if you're in Oregon, you may be close to one of these places. If you want to find out, we'd love to see you. Go to thenarrowpath.com. Your web page is on your browser, thenarrowpath.com, and there's a tab that says announcements.